The new Hearthstone expansion, March of the Lich King, is right around the corner, and with it comes a ton of new cards and a brand new class. So in this video, I theorycrafted 13 decks ready to go for day one of the new expansion. Hey guys, I'm Funky Monkey, your go-to deck builder, and in this video, I made 13 different decks ready to go for day one of the new expansion. So there's one deck for every class, and there's 3 for Death Knight, 1 for each rune type. And with each deck, I wanted to make them as different and unique as possible with using as many new cards as I could while still keeping them competitively viable. And most of these decks I did actually get to play test them already for the theory crafting event, so they should all be refined and ready to go for you. But without further ado, let's hop into the first deck. All right, so the first deck up is going to be Blood Death Knight, and this is a strong one. When I play tested this for the theory crafting event, I ended up having a 100% win rate. So this is a control deck that has a ton of removal and survivability, and we look to win games by outvaluing our opponent and to play Mograine, which does automatic damage every single turn to our opponent. So we have removal in the form of Soul Stealer, which is like a twisting nether with a body, and it also gives you corpses. We have Corpse Explosion, which can deal upwards of like 10 or 20 damage. We have Blood Boil, which can heal you as well. We have Asphyxiate and Obliterate to kill any large threats. And Vampiric Blood is one of the best cards in the set, in my opinion. It's 2 mana for heal 10 and draw a card, which is insane. And we can even find more of them through discovers like Venomous Scorpid or through school teachers. And we even have lots of disruption in here as well too. So we have the Theotar and we have the Mutinous and the Patchwork. Yeah, this deck is pretty annoying to deal with and it kind of has it all. So watch out for this deck. The next Death Knight rune that we're covering is going to be Frost. And this is going to be a Frost combo deck. So the idea behind this deck is we have a ton of burn spells that go face, and then we can play them with spell damage like Guild Traders or Blood Mage Thalnos and refresh our mana using Horn of Winter so we can blast our opponent for a ton of damage. This deck just has an absolute absurd amount of card draw, and also the Lady Death Whisper, which doubles all the frost spells in your hand. And do not underestimate how much damage this deck can do. And for the last Death Knight rune, we have Unholy, and this is going to be more of a token Death Knight. So the idea behind this deck is we just want to be flooding the board with as many tokens as possible, using things like Nerubian Swarm Guard, Tomb Guardians, Army of the Dead, or Possessive Fire, and that is fuel for our infused minions like the Insatiable Devourers or Sylvanas or Sire Denathrius. And all of these tokens that are dying are leaving a lot of corpses for us, so we can utilize them with the Lord Marogar. So he'll resurrect a board full of skeletons with Rush, and he'll buff them to be huge. And if that doesn't polish off our opponents, we can polish them off with the Denathrius. Yeah, I'm really excited for this one as well, to swarm our opponents with Unholy. All right, so our first non-Death Knight class is going to be this Dragon Paladin. We have a lot of cool new dragons to make this archetype viable again. We have a new early game dragon, the Amber Whelp, and we have some really insane mid-game dragons as well. So we have the Time Warden, and then we can follow that up with an Onyxian Warrior or a Daring Drake for Rush. If we ever fall behind on the board, we have our Anachronos now, as well as the good old Equality plus City Tax board clear. And then to polish off our opponent, we got the good old Kazakusan. And to help tutor the Kazakusan to end games faster, we have the Order in the Court now as well. I did have the luxury of playing this for the early access theory crafting event, and it did feel very strong. So maybe it's Dragon Paladin's time to shine finally. The next deck up, we have Arcane Hunter. So the cool thing about the Arcane package is it kind of does everything. It controls the board, it draws, and it goes face. We can utilize a couple of the new minions, the Silvermoon Farstrider and the Halduran Brightwing, to buff all of our arcane spells. And the main arcane spells that we're looking to buff are going to be like the Conjured Arrow, so we can get more draw from it the more spell damage it has, or the Eversong Portal, so we get more 4/4s with Rush. And to give these spells even more spell damage, we can use the Talented Arcanist or the Silvermoon Arcanist. And another cool little wombo combo that we can do in here is we have the Twin Bow Terracoil, so we can double up the Conjured Arrow for double the draw, or double up the Eversong Portal for a ton of 4/4s with Rush, or we can even save it for the collateral damage for a ton of face damage to polish off our opponent. And since we're talking about Arcane, let's hop straight into Arcane Mage. So this deck is going to use the quest shell to complete our quest, and then once it is completed, we get that +2 spell damage. We play the new Vexillus with a bunch of these new Arcane Bolts, because each one of them will be doing 10 damage to our opponent's face. So to complete the quest, we have a lot of Fire, Frost, and Arcane spells in here that you'd expect. And then to get more Arcane Bolts into our hand for the combo, we can have the new Arcane Worm or the new Arc Splitter. And to help us combo all these Arcane Bolts together with the Vex list, we have the Siphon Mana, so we can discount all these Arcane Bolts down to 0 mana. So whether you love it or not, Quest Mage might be back. Next up is one of my favorites from the early access theory crafting event, and that's going to be Concoction Death Rattle Rogue or Potion Rogue. So this combines both of the cool new packages from Rogue, the Death Rattle package and the Concoction package. So to make the concoctions, we have the Concoctor, the Potion Belt, the Vile Apothecary, and the new Potion Master Putricide. And to help cheat out these concoctions, we have the Ghoulish Alchemist. And what these concoctions do is they're a 3-mana spell that either kills a random enemy, thieves a random card, draws 2 cards, deals 3 damage, or summons a random 3-cost minion. So with all of these different effects, they offer a lot of tempo and value. And then in the mid game, we can get some insane swing turns with our Death Rattle stuff. We have the new Rotten Rodent to discount all the Death Rattles in our deck, which are going to be the Korak, the Scourge Illusionist, and the Burning Blade Acolyte. And the cool thing is that if we discount Burning Blade Acolyte down to 4 mana in our deck, we can all of a sudden draw with the Sketchy Information. And not only that, but we have the Scourge Illusionist, which will draw a 0 mana Korak or a 0 mana Burning Blade Acolyte. So this deck just has a lot of tempo and a lot of really big swing turns. And the cool thing about concoctions, if we ever need a little bit more damage to polish off our opponents, we can just brew up some more potions and chuck them at our opponent's face. All right, the next deck up is going to be this Fire and Rage Warrior. We have a lot of really cool new tools in this deck. We have the new Sun Fury Champion, which is kind of like the old Risky Skipper, if you remember that, but it does 1 damage AoE to everything whenever you cast a fire spell, which is really nice in this deck because we want our minions damaged. And the fire spells that we're going to be playing play off of that as well. So we have the Blazing Power, which gets stronger the more damaged minions you have. We have the Embers of Strife to create a couple of tokens, which can also get damaged. We have the Light of the Phoenix, which is really insane card draw in here. And to top it all off, we have Thori Balor, where you get a 4/4 rusher every time you cast a fire spell up to 3 times. So this ensures that you're always staying ahead on board, so you can always be pushing face damage. Yeah, this deck actually looks insanely powerful, so I'm really scared to face against it. The next deck that I have for you guys is going to be this Undead Resurrect Priest. This deck is so cool because it utilizes the new Scourge Rager. In addition to the other new 3-drop, the Haunting Nightmare, we can resurrect them over and over again using Animate Dead, and we can resurrect them more using the Bone Collar or the High Cultist Basilisk. Yeah, we're just going to be having these board full of all these Ragers and 3/3 minions. So I figure we can polish off our opponent using like the Zyrella to do this again, or the Denathrius. I'm really excited to try this deck out. It looks actually pretty good. And I mean, what's more fun than hitting your opponent with a bunch of Ragers? This next deck is really awesome. It's a no minion Demon Hunter. So we only run 3 minions in the deck because we have the Soul Eater's Scythe. So at the beginning of the game, we eat those minions with the scythe and turn them into a spell. We shuffle that spell into our deck, and whenever we draw that spell, we get to discover one of those 3 minions, which means we have 3 times the chance of drawing one of those minions for the first time and 2 times the chance of drawing it for that second discover. So because we have more chances of finding Jace and the Zymox, we can go a Renethal deck here. So because we have to be playing all spells, we're just going to be jamming all of the fel spells and all the relics that we can. And by going all spells, we can take advantage of a couple other new cards too. So we can do the Mark of the Scorn to draw and deal damage. And then we have the Felderai Warband, which is 8 damage split up how you want, which is insane. And then we have Deal with the Devil, which is surprisingly tough to deal with, which can turn into a lot of healing. And a lot of the spells that are in this deck go face, so we can do a ton of damage. And then when we're ready, we can discover the Zymox for a massive swing turn, or the Jace so we can polish off our opponents. Now we're going to get a lot more aggressive with this next one, and that's going to be an Undead Aggro Druid. So this deck utilizes a lot of the new Undead minions, which have a lot of sticky death rattles, which means that we can always have a big board to buff. So we have the Arms Dealer and the Banshee and the Lingering Zombie to get the ball rolling. And then for more sticky undead minions, we have the Infected Peasant and the Necrolite. And once some of our undead minions start dying, we can utilize that as well with the Nerubian Flyer to make more undead minions, and the Nerubian Vizier so we can maybe discover some more buffs. And then to polish off our opponent, we got the Pride's Fury and the Elder Nadox. Yeah, this deck looks insanely sticky and tough to deal with, so I'm not excited to play against it, but I am very excited to play it. And since we're talking about undead aggro decks, we can talk about Shaman with this Undead Death Rattle Aggro Shaman. So this one has all the same early undead minions like the Arms Dealer and the Banshee. We can also run the Scourge Troll, which doubles the death rattles given to it. And we can give death rattles to it with the Deathweaver Ore to summon a bunch of 3/2s. We can use the Vrykpool Necrolite to make a couple of 2/2 rushers, the Hawkstrider Rancher, the Shadow Suffusion so we can go face with a bunch more damage, or even like Rotgale for more buffs. And kind of same idea as the Undead Aggro Druid, where we just want to go wide as possible and then buff our minions up with these death rattles so they're sticky. And then we land a big Suffusion on our minions, or like a big Rotgale or Bloodlust to polish off our opponents. And last, but certainly not least, we have this Undead Resurrect Imp Lock. So we have the Imp package for the early game, but once we hit the mid game, that's where things get spicy. We can use the new Amorphous Slime to discard an Undead out of our hand, and the only Undeads that we should have are going to be the Darkhan Drakthir and the Flesh Behemoth. So when the slime dies and we get a minion, we either get the Drakthir guaranteed or the Behemoth guaranteed, which will pull the Drakthir. And then once that Drakthir dies, we can resurrect it again and again using the Infantry Reanimator. So it's a lot of damage and a lot of healing, and if that doesn't polish off our opponents, we got the good old Denathrius. Well, that's going to wrap up all the decks that I have for you for day 1 of the new March of the Lich King expansion. I hope you're as excited as I am for all these brand new decks and the new Death Knight class, and I hope I was able to give you some good ideas and some inspiration. If I did, then let me know by leaving a like down below on the video. And if you like these decks, every deck that you see on this channel is handmade by me, and I promise to never ever net deck. So if you want to see the most unique and creative decks for the new expansion, then consider subscribing. And now I want to hear from you guys. Let me know in the comments down below, which deck are you most excited to play for the new expansion? Well, that's all for now. I'll see you in the new expansion, and stay funky.